This is our Swift Basecamp II, which we bought used as the second owners and complete newbies to caravanning. This funky and quirky little caravan has proven to be the gateway to endless adventures. Thinking of that old adage, if I knew then what I know now, what would I be looking for if I was to buy one again? Let's discuss in this vlog. So, we've owned this Basecamp for 18 months now, and at the time of filming this video it's January and we've just gone into the second year of full ownership. We bought this caravan used, we were the second owners, and other than knowing what year of Basecamp I wanted to buy, I knew nothing about touring caravans. I had no idea what to look for when we went to see it. I was really in the hands of the sellers, quite naively, and we were very lucky that we had good sellers and they sold us a good caravan. Now, if anything was to happen to this caravan, I would without a doubt buy a Basecamp again, and I would buy a used one again. So if I knew then what I know now, what would I be looking for when I go to see the caravan? So in this vlog we'll have a look at exterior and we'll have a look at interior, and I'll point out all the things that I would look for. The topics that I'm going to discuss in this vlog are not unique to the Basecamp caravan. They can be applied to any caravans, but I'm discussing them in the context of a Swift Basecamp because one, obviously I own one, and two is that these caravans over-index with newcomers coming into the pastime, if you like. It is generally newcomers buying their very first caravan, as we were. So that's why it is applicable to Basecamps. So let's just say you found a great looking Basecamp for sale used, or let's just say I have found another one to buy. There are a couple of things I'm going to want to do. First of all, before I even go to see it, I'm going to ask the seller to provide me with the VIN number. The VIN number is a personal identification number that's applied to every single leisure vehicle. It's unique to that particular leisure vehicle. I'm going to be asking for that, and I'm also going to be asking for a copy of the last service report. So first up, the VIN number. I'm going to use that to do what's called a CRIS check. So I'm going to go online and I'm going to run a CRIS check. At the time I did it for this one, it cost me £15. Now at the time of recording, I think it's £18. And essentially, you'll input that VIN number and it will give you a report back, and you'll be able to see if there's any outstanding finance on the caravan. You'll also be able to check that the person selling it is actually the owner, and you'll also be able to see if the vehicle's been written off or recalled by the insurance company. So once it's passed all those checks, next up is to look at the service report. Every caravan needs to be serviced every 12 months, and that is to validate its warranty. So if a caravan has missed a service, the warranty can be invalid. And also the service is important, so it can pick up if there are any merging problems with electrics or gas or anything to do with the caravan. If the caravan you're going to see is under 12 months old, like this one was when we went to buy it, and the service is due, that's absolutely fine. I'll just go and see the caravan. The service is due. It will be up on you if you buy it to get it done. But if the caravan you're going to see is 2, 3, 4 years old and it hasn't had a service, that would be a deal breaker for me. I wouldn't move on to go and see the caravan. But let's assume that the owner has had it serviced and they send you the service report. You'll receive it and it's about 3 or 4 pages long, and the service checks absolutely everything you can think of and even more. It's a very detailed report, and at the end of the service the engineer does spend 10 or 15 minutes with you going through every little point. So the seller will be able to answer any questions that you have relating to that particular service. But for the point of the exercise, I would be scrolling right to the bottom of the report and having a look at the damp report. And on mine here you can see that when this caravan was serviced a couple of months ago, the moisture levels all around the caravan around the floor of the Caravan were in single digit percentages. That means that it's bone dry. So if you work on a scale at anything under 10% bone dry, anything from 11 to 25% is considered normal. Anything above certainly above 30% and beyond, there are water ingress issues with that Caravan, and for me that would be a deal breaker and I'd move on to the next one. But assuming that's okay, let's move forwards. And the last point to consider before we go outside is the age of the Basecamp. So when I was looking for this Caravan, I specifically wanted a 2020 model, and the reason for that was the year that Swift removed timber from the total construction of the Caravan. So the 2020 model is a full GRP shell. GRP, the way it's made, means it's completely impervious to water. Doesn't mean you can't get water ingress in the windows, but it means the actual structure itself can't leak. And also in the 2020 model, the floor is GRP. So the floor is a GRP layer, foam GRP layer. So if you have a leak or you have a spillage or anything like that happens and it goes under the floor's not going to get damaged. Okay, with all that being said, let's go outside and start having a look at the exterior. So the first place I'm going to go and want to have a look is on the roof of the Caravan. But as you can see, I'm on a campsite, so I don't have access to a tall pair of step ladders. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to get a drone up. My first inspection would be of this unassuming GRP fitting. This is the windbreak for the solar panel. I would be checking to see if there is any damage caused by low hanging branches or stones or debris fired up from the road. If there was damage to this fitting, it wouldn't be a deal breaker as it is not part of the structure. A repair would be approximately £500 plus, so that would be a negotiation with the seller. Depending on the year and model of the Basecamp you go to see, there will be a 100 watt solar panel. If there was any damage to this solar panel, this would result in an immediate walkaway for me. So walking around the exterior, first place I'm going to start is the jockey wheel. Now it doesn't matter what you pay for a Caravan, there's always a cheap jockey wheel on it. We've upgraded ours to the Cart Ultimate jockey wheel. And what I'd be looking for is to see if the jockey wheel is damaged in any way, if there's any cracks in that rubber, because the last thing you want when you're on your first outing is your jockey wheel to fail. Next up would be the bumpers. The grey bumpers surround the Basecamp and they are rather large. But if you think about the Basecamp appealing to first time caravanners and the first time towing, they are actually protecting the body of the Basecamp and all the potential impact areas. So I would just be walking around and having a look to see if any of them are cracked or damaged. If they are, that's going to mean the Basecamp's going to have to be returned to the dealer, and that might be a deal breaker for me. I would also be checking the grey water waste pipes, as you can see under here, where the grey pipe plugs in, and they are the exit pipes for the kitchen sink and the wet room sink and shower. And you have to sort of be quite firm getting the pipes in, so I'd be making sure that those fittings aren't damaged or come away from the frame of the Caravan. If they are, it's going to need to go back to the dealer, or at the very least have an engineer to come around to repair them. So that's probably a negotiation with the seller. Next thing I'd be looking at are all the windows. Now, it's only to be expected that you might find minor scratches running down the windows, and it's unavoidable really when you're towing the Caravan down single track lanes, etc. So I'd just be checking all the windows. Any light scratches can be polished out with a special polish. I would also use the manual lever and draw up the steadies one by one to make sure that they've got a smooth flow. I don't use a drill for the steadies like most caravan users do, because I just want to make sure that there's no grinding going on, or I end up damaging the steadies in any way. If you're lucky enough to find a Basecamp with a motor mover installed on it, like this one, which is essentially turned your Caravan into a remote control car, and is a get out of jail free card for getting it on your drive and onto pitches, etc, etc. If it's got one of those on, the battery, the leisure battery in the Caravan, is going to have at least 95 amps per hour of power. Otherwise it will burn out very quickly. As I found out on our last service, the battery that was in this Basecamp wasn't powerful enough for the motor mover. So it cost us about £250 to replace it. So I'd be asking the seller what battery's in there, and if it needed upgrading, that would be in negotiation. Another consideration are the tyres. Tyres on a Caravan need replacing every 5 years. So depending on how old the Caravan is you're going to see, that would be a question I would be asking. A consideration, depending on the age of the Basecamp, would be the exterior barbecue point here. On this model 2020, that's at the back of the Caravan, right near the awning. So when you're running the barbecue, you tend to be sitting out round the awning. However, on newer Basecamps, and I think from 2022 onwards, I'm not entirely sure, they fitted the external barbecue point here, which from an engineering perspective makes sense because of the gas canister that's in the locker at the front. But it's just worth thinking about. If you're barbecuing here, you're sort of out of the social area around the awning. It wouldn't be a deal breaker for me, but it would certainly something I'd need to think about. As we start to make our way into the Basecamp, another check I'd be doing would be on the awning rail above the door. So the awnings, if you're using the Caravan all year like we do, the awnings can take quite a bit of a battering when the weather's bad. So therefore, you're going to have quite a bit of pressure on the awning rail on the top of the door there. So what I'd be doing is I'll just be getting up on the step and I'd just be running my fingers along that awning rail to make sure that it's not loose or that there's any damage to it. And if the awning rail was damaged, that would be a return to the dealer, and that would be a deal breaker for me. Another check I'd be doing would be with the key lock on the back of the door. So the Basecamp door is on the back of the Caravan, as you'll likely know. What that means is that lock gets exposed to a lot of spray when you're towing and debris, etc. So I'd just be getting the key, putting the key in the lock and just checking that that's got a nice smooth turn to it. So I lubricate this lock every 2 or 3 months with a couple of sprays of WD-40, and it does make a difference. So I'd be checking that to see if the locks had the same care of attention that mine has. And if it was grinding, it wouldn't be a deal breaker, but I'd certainly be investigating further how well the Caravan's been looked after. And the last check I'd be doing externally before I started to look inside the Caravan would be the rubber seals that run along the windows and doors. So it says there, actually a reminder on the door, certainly on our model, lubricate seals regularly. What you need to do is you just every 3 or 4 months just go around all the rubber seals with some silicone spray and a cloth and just make sure that they're not drying out. So I'd be checking all these seals to make sure there's none cracked or dry or broken. And if those seals were damaged, I would be leaving that particular Caravan and moving on to the next one. So now we've come into the Caravan, there are a couple of things that I would certainly be checking. And the first one is for water ingress. Now there have been some reports of Basecamps leaking from this big window here. So what I'd be looking for is I'd be pulling any cushions back and I'd be checking this panel here to see if there's any evidence of water. Any evidence of water on this panel. If I found there was water staining on that panel, that would be an immediate deal off for me and I would be moving on to the next one. But also I'd be sort of pushing the seller to see if there has been any water ingress at that window. As I say, there's only been a few reported cases, but I'd certainly be checking it. Next up would be the bed. So as you'll be aware, the bench seats fold out to, should I say, a super king size, very comfortable bed. So what I'd be doing is I would just be pulling up the cushions here and checking all those slats to make sure none of them are split or broken, or there's any shavings of wood or plastic underneath there, just to make sure that the bed's been properly looked after. Because when the bed's pulled out, if the legs aren't put down properly, the bed would be damaged, and if the bed was damaged, that would be a deal breaker for me. One very important check to do is in the wardrobe. And in the wardrobe you'll find a panel, and behind that panel is the water heater, electronics and some plumbing. And if you've got a whale system installed in the Basecamp that I was looking at, or you're looking at, the check I would need to do would be here. This is the hot water outlet valve. That needs to be brass. If it's black plastic, it's not a deal breaker, but that black plastic needs to be replaced ASAP, because there have been numerous reports of that unit failing and flooding base camps. A replacement can be sent free of charge from Wales and can be fitted yourself. And finally, I would just go in all the cupboards, open them up, and just have a good look to see if there's any evidence of any moisture that's been building up in there. It's unlikely that you'll find damp, but if there's been any moisture and condensation, it's left any black marks or any evidence of any mould in there. In particular, I would come in here into the tins, and I would just have a look in the tin section to make sure that there's been no leaking from the sink fitting at the back there. So, providing all that looked good, I think I would proceed and agree a deal. Considering that we are still very much newcomers to the world of caravanning, the checks and inspections articulated in this vlog are based on my current understanding of this remarkable little caravan. I hope you found this vlog useful, and I look forward to seeing you on an adventure very soon. Thank you for watching.